You'd think raising a child who lost everything would bring you closer. But I learned the hard way. Sometimes pain doesn't make people humble. Sometimes it makes them cruel. Before I begin, if you've ever felt taken for granted by the very people you gave everything to, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every one of your stories and they mean the world to me. The morning my son broke his spine, I was making blueberry pancakes. He was 17, wild behind the wheel of a second-hand Mustang his uncle had helped him buy. It was the kind of morning where sunlight filters through the curtains like it's promising something good. But instead of smiles and syrup, I got a phone call that stopped time. They said he was lucky to be alive. That's what they always say, don't they? Lucky, as if not dying is the same thing as living. I remember racing to the hospital, hair still damp from my shower, apron still tied at the waist. His face was pale, lips cracked. Tubes ran in and out like roots clinging to life. I held his hand and promised him, right then and there, "You're not alone, baby. I've got you." And I did, for the next 20 years. In those first weeks, I slept in hospital chairs that chewed up my spine worse than time ever could. I learned to lift a grown man from bed to chair without so much as a grunt. I bathed him, trimmed his nails, cleaned his catheter tubes, and yes, I even wiped his behind. That's love, isn't it? Not the flowers and birthday cards kind, the real kind, the kind that shows up when no one else will. After 6 months in rehab, we moved back into our little ranch-style home in Iowa. I quit my job as a library assistant. My friends stopped calling after a while. They didn't know what to say. And truth be told, I didn't have much energy for small talk. My world became him. His meds, his mood swings, his meals, his appointments, his pain. We developed a rhythm over the years. I'd get up at 6, make oatmeal the way he liked, thin with brown sugar and cinnamon. I'd help him dress, wheel him to the window where the sunlight hit just right. He'd sit with headphones in while I folded laundry and watched the birds. He wasn't unkind, not really, just used to it. Used to me, used to being the center of everything. Sometimes I'd joke, "Don't get too spoiled now, mister," and he'd chuckle without looking up from his iPad. But something in him had changed. Or maybe something in me had just worn too thin to ignore it. I started noticing little things. He didn't say thank you anymore. He snapped when the eggs were too firm. He rolled his eyes when I forgot his second pillow. And then there was the way he talked to people on the phone, as if I were a background appliance. "I don't know," he said one day to a friend on speaker while I was sweeping the floor. "She's here. Yeah, she helps me. Pretty much like a living maid at this point, but for free." He laughed. And I stopped sweeping. Just like that. I stood there, broom in hand, my spine straightening as if that one sentence untwisted something in me. A free maid. That's what I had become in his eyes. Not a mother, not a woman who sacrificed her youth, her career, her knees. Just pretty much like a maid. For free. I didn't say a word, not that day. But I started watching him differently. Not as my baby, not as my broken boy, but as a grown man who never once asked what my dreams had been, and never once said, "Mom, how are you holding up?" That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself like a stranger. My hands were veiny, my shoulders sloped. My reflection wore a threadbare sweater with a stain on the collar. I hadn't bought anything new for myself in years, not even socks. I stared at the tired woman in the mirror and whispered, "Is this all I am now?" No answer came, of course, but something inside me, maybe the part of me I'd buried under years of oatmeal and medication reminders, started to stir. In New Chapter, the cracks begin to widen. A small moment shatters routine. And this time, she doesn't just clean up the mess, she starts asking questions. The next morning, I made the eggs over medium. Not because he liked them that way, he liked them soft, but because I wanted to see if he'd say something. He did. He took one bite and frowned like a child who got the wrong cereal. You know I don't like the yolks firm." I said nothing, just stood there with the spatula still in hand, the heat of the skillet warming my fingers. He didn't look at me when he said it. He never did anymore. I was a shape, a shadow, a hand that fed and wiped and turned the pages of his book when his arms were too stiff. I cleaned the plate in silence, scrubbing the egg crust as if it had insulted me too. That afternoon, he asked if I could clip his toenails. Something about the way he said it, "Can you do the nails today too?" like he was checking off a chore list. I hesitated. He noticed. "What's the problem?" he asked, his voice flat. I smiled, too tightly. "Nothing, just my back's a little stiff today." He didn't ask if I was okay. He just rolled his eyes and said, "Well, if not you, then who?" That question rang louder in my head than it should have. If not you, then who? I'd built an entire world around that assumption, that I was the only one who could care for him, understand him, love him through the bitterness. But what if? What if that was just the story I told myself to keep going? That night, I took out an old box from the attic. It smelled of cedar and forgotten years. Inside were photo albums, crinkled love letters from his father before he left, and a yellowed brochure from the art school I'd once dreamed of attending, Savannah School of Art and Design, SCAD. God, I hadn't said that name out loud in 20 years. I remembered how I used to draw faces on napkins, windows, my son's lunch bags. I even painted one whole wall of the guest room before the accident, a field of wildflowers stretching toward a golden sun. That room became his after the wheelchair. The mural got covered by medical shelves and a breathing machine. My pains dried out. I told myself I was doing the right thing. And maybe I was, but at what cost? The next morning, something shifted. I didn't bring him breakfast in bed. I left it on the table. He called out, "Mom?" "Yes?" "Where's my tray?" "In the kitchen," I said, trying to sound neutral. "Figured you might want a change of scenery today." A long pause. Then, "I guess." That guess was a thunderclap. He wheeled himself into the kitchen, grumbling slightly. He hated pushing himself unless absolutely necessary. I didn't apologize, just poured coffee and asked, "You need sugar?" "No, I'm fine." He looked up at me for a second longer than usual. Maybe he sensed something. Maybe he didn't care. Later that day, his caseworker came for the monthly check-in. Her name was Denise, late 40s, kind smile, tight ponytail. She always brought a clipboard and the same neutral tone. "How are things going?" Usually I stayed in the background while they talked, but this time I sat down beside them. Denise blinked. "Oh, Mrs. Carter, didn't expect to see you here today." I smiled tightly. I thought it was time I joined the conversation. My son shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Denise ran through her questions. Meds, appetite, sleep, muscle stiffness. Then she asked him if he felt he was receiving enough support. He glanced at me. "Yeah, I mean, my mom's here 24/7, basically does everything." I raised my eyebrows slightly. "Like a live-in hoper?" Denise asked, jotting notes. "Yeah, like free home care," he chuckled. That word again, free, like I was a donation, a bonus feature. Denise didn't laugh. Her pen paused in the air. I spoke, gently but clearly. "You know, Denise, we've never formally discussed outside help. Maybe it's time we did." My son's head snapped toward me. "Mom?" I met his eyes. "I think I need a break. Maybe just a few hours a week." His jaw clenched. "We've managed fine for 20 years. "Yes," I said, "and now I'm tired." Silence filled the room like fog. Denise slowly resumed writing. "I'll make a note of that. We can look into respite care options." He didn't say another word until she left. Then came the storm. "I can't believe you embarrassed me like that," he hissed. "You know how I look when they talk about outside help, like I'm a burden." I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. My voice was cold steel. "You called me a free maid in front of your friend, and now you're worried about how you look?" His mouth opened, then closed. I turned and walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. But inside, something had cracked, and cracks let in light. That night, I slept for 9 hours straight. No alarms, no midnight repositioning, no medicine charts.
In the morning, I didn't rush. I made pancakes for one. He didn't call. He waited. And I let him wait. Because sometimes silence is the beginning of dignity. The next morning, she steps outside for the first time in years, and one small decision sets off a chain reaction that no one, not even her son, could have seen coming.
The screen door creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Because it hadn't. For 2 decades, my world had shrunk to a tight loop: bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, hallway, wheelchair ramp. Rain or shine, sickness or not, I never left him, not once for more than an hour. But that morning, I did something I hadn't done since George W. Bush was president. I stepped outside alone. And I didn't just walk down the porch. I kept going. The air felt like a stranger I'd once loved. It was crisp, sweet, and loud with life. Birds chattered in the oaks, and some neighbor's dog yapped behind a fence. I didn't even care that my shoes didn't match. One was navy, one was black. Let it be a metaphor. I walked down to the mailbox, something he usually had his nurse aide fetch on the rare days we had one, and I opened it like I was opening a treasure chest. Junk mail, a coupon for dish soap, a local church flyer about a potluck, but it felt like gold. On the way back, I passed by old Mrs. Killian's porch. She used to be my bridge partner back when my Wednesdays meant something. She looked up from her knitting. Her eyebrows shot up like she'd seen a ghost. "Is that you, Alice?" I laughed, actually laughed. "In the flesh," I said, spreading my arms like a magician after a trick. "Well, I'll be," she said, pulling off her glasses. "I thought you died." "Not quite, just misplaced." She nodded slowly. "You should come by sometime. We're still doing Wednesday games, just fewer teeth and more wine now." "I might," I said. "I just might." And for the first time in years, I actually meant it. When I got home, the door felt heavier than before. I wasn't gone more than 20 minutes, but the guilt, it clung to me like wet clothes. Was he okay? Did he fall? Did he need his meds? I opened the door quietly, bracing myself. He was exactly where I left him, sitting in front of the TV, headset on, playing some shooter game with the same focus he once had for algebra. He didn't even notice I was gone. 20 minutes of freedom, and he hadn't even missed me. I made myself a cup of tea, not for him, just for me. Chamomile with a bit of honey. I sipped it by the window, watching the wind move through the birch trees like dancers in slow motion. For 20 years, I hadn't seen the world move unless I was behind glass. Now, it moved for me. And with every sip, I felt less like a ghost. But the moment didn't last. Around 2 p.m., his voice cut through the hallway like a knife. "Mom, did you give me my 1 o'clock pills?" I checked the tray. They were still there. I walked in and said calmly, "No, I didn't." He blinked. "Why not?" "I went for a walk." He looked at me like I'd just said I robbed a bank. "You left me alone? What if something had happened?" I leaned against the doorframe. What did happen? He paused. "Nothing, but that's not the point." "No," I said. "It kind of is." He crossed his arms. "I can't rely on you if you just disappear." That hit me harder than I expected. Disappear. As if I hadn't already disappeared into him years ago. As if I hadn't erased myself, one chore, one lost dream, one back rub at a time. I met his gaze. "I was gone for 20 minutes. You were playing video games." He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "I'll give you your pills, but from now on, I'm going to start stepping out, once a day." "Stepping out for what?" "For me," I said. "That's what." He didn't like it. I could see it in his clenched jaw, the twitch in his brow, but he didn't stop me. Because, for the first time, he knew. Mom wasn't just the help anymore. In New Chapter, one small outing turns into a quiet rebellion, and what she finds outside her home opens a door she never thought she'd see again. It started with the church flyer. I wasn't even planning to read it. I almost tossed it with the junk mail. But something about the soft pastel blue and the words "community potluck, all are welcome" made me pause. All are welcome. even ghosts apparently. The next Wednesday, I put on lipstick for the first time in years. Not red, I wasn't that brave yet. Just a soft coral, something that said, yes, I'm still here. I combed my hair, changed into a blouse that didn't have food stains, and put on earrings. Real ones with tiny pearls. The kind you wear when you want the world to remember you're still a woman. I left him a reheated casserole and a note. Gone for 1 hour. You'll be fine. So will I. And I walked out. The church was 3 blocks away. The parking lot was full. That alone nearly made me turn around. I wasn't used to people anymore. Not as me. Only as someone's mother. Someone's helper. But before I could talk myself out of it, I heard it. Alice Carter? I turned and saw Castor Louisa. Gray curls, wide smile, floral scarf as usual. She hadn't changed a bit. And she pulled me into the kind of hug that almost makes you cry. I thought you moved, she said. I smiled. Nope, just been indoors. She stepped back and looked me over like a proud aunt. You look radiant. Radiant? No one had used that word on me since before the accident. Since before I traded lipstick for latex gloves. Inside, the smell of baked ham, cheesy casseroles, and pineapple upside-down cake filled the air. Folding tables lined the community hall, people laughing, catching up, asking about kids and grandkids. I filled a plate, sat down, ate slowly. No one asked me to do anything. No one complained about temperature or texture. I didn't have to earn my seat. I just had to be. About halfway through my potato salad, a man sat down across from me. Tweed jacket, kind eyes, a little shy. He introduced himself as Ben, recently widowed, retired pharmacist, big on crossword puzzles and volunteer work. We chatted, light stuff, weather, casseroles, small-town gossip. Then he asked, "Do you have family here?" And for once, I didn't mention my son. I just said, "I do. But I'm learning to have me too." He smiled, not with pity, with recognition, like he understood more than he let on. When I got up to leave, he stood too. "Will I see you again?" he asked. "I think so," I said, and meant it. I came home to silence. He was fine. The casserole was half-eaten. His wheelchair sat by the window. But something was different. He looked at me like I was late. But he didn't say a word. Maybe he didn't know what to say anymore. Maybe he finally realized I wasn't just orbiting him like the moon. I had found a little son of my own. That night, I sat with my tea and sketchbook, yes, sketchbook, and began to draw again. My hand was rusty, the lines were stiff, but it felt good. I sketched the potluck table, a slice of pie, the corner of Ben's tweed jacket, the back of a woman's pearl earring. And for the first time in years, I wasn't drawing to fill time. I was drawing to feel alive. And when I turned out the light, I didn't dread tomorrow, because I had somewhere to go, something to feel, something that was mine. This new chapter, her quiet rebellion grows bolder, but so does the resistance inside her home. And one cruel discovery threatens to unravel everything she's reclaimed. It started with the sketchbook. He saw it lying on the coffee table one afternoon, half covered by a dish towel. I'd been drawing between laundry loads, something small, nothing bold, just a basket of apples with a crooked shadow and a folded napkin. He picked it up and flipped through it without asking. "What's this?" he said, flipping a page. "My drawings." He snorted. "You still do that?" That, as if it were a teenage hobby, as if it didn't matter that the woman who spent 2 decades wiping drool was still a person with a soul and something to say. "You used to be good at this," he added, like he was handing out compliments from a throne. "Back in high school, right?" I stayed quiet. He kept turning pages. Then he stopped at a sketch I'd done of the potluck, the long folding tables, the pastor's scarf, a man in a tweed coat from across the room. "Who's this?" "Someone I met." He raised an eyebrow. "You're meeting people now?" His tone was somewhere between confusion and suspicion. Yes, I said, keeping my voice level. I've started going to the community potluck on Wednesdays. He closed the book with a soft thud. Is that why you've been forgetting things lately? Excuse me? The other day, you forgot my pills, and the laundry was half done. I felt it then, the twist of accusation beneath casual words. He was trying to reel me back in, to make me feel small, needed, guilty. But I wasn't swallowing that hook. I didn't forget anything, I said calmly. I delayed by an hour. You were fine. He narrowed his eyes. So this is the new you now? Lipstick and church lunches and drawing strangers? I stared at him. Yes, that's the new me. The one who still has a name besides Mom and bring me my charger. He didn't like that, and I didn't care. He turned his chair away from me and muttered, "Unbelievable." I stepped closer. What is? That you'd rather run around town than take care of your own son. There it was, the hammer, the guilt trip he'd been sharpening for years. I took a slow breath and said, I didn't stop taking care of you. I just started remembering how to take care of me. He didn't respond. He just wheeled away to his room, slamming the door behind him with the full authority of someone who never had to open one for himself. Later that evening, I overheard him talking on the phone. He didn't know I was in the hallway. He thought I was outside watering the potted herbs. Yeah, she's acting weird lately, he said, voice low and tight. Going out, laughing at stupid jokes, drawing again, like she's some teenager. Honestly, it's embarrassing. She used to be reliable. Now she's just... He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't have to. I felt it in my bones. He no longer saw me as his mother, just his employee, one that was starting to get too opinionated. I didn't cry. I made tea, I took a bath, I let the water wash over 20 years of silent loyalty. Because I wasn't just hearing words, I was hearing the truth behind them. He never saw me as a woman, only as someone who existed for him. And in that silence, I made a decision. Not a loud one, not yet, but a firm one. In New Chapter, the mask slips, and when she stumbles on something buried in a drawer, the betrayal takes a darker turn. It happened because of a lost charger. He said he couldn't find the one for his tablet. I knew exactly where it was, tangled beneath his nightstand with an old sock and a stale pretzel, but I let him huff about it for 20 minutes before offering to look. I didn't mind helping. I minded being expected to help. I bent down, groaning a little as my knees clicked, the symphony of aging, and reached beneath the drawer. That's when I noticed the file folder. It was old, torn at the edges, crammed so tight it had bent the drawer's bottom panel. It wasn't labeled, just wedged deep in a place only someone eye level with the floor would spot. Naturally, I pulled it out. Inside, mail. Dozens of unopened letters, all addressed to me. Some from insurance companies, others from Medicaid, a few with logos I didn't recognize. I pulled one open with trembling fingers. Notice of benefit adjustment due to secondary claimant access filed on your behalf. What? Another envelope. Confirmation of authorized access for financial caregiver status. And there it was, his name. Primary financial caregiver, Aaron Carter, my son. I sat on his bed, file in my lap, and felt the blood drain from my face. Somehow, quietly, legally, he'd filed to become my financial handler, claimed I was unable to manage certain things, that I needed assistance, that I gave consent. I hadn't, not once. When he came in, still fuming over the charger, he stopped short, saw the folder, the letters, my face. His mouth opened. That's private. I held up the envelope with his signature. You forged my name. He didn't flinch, just said, I had to. You weren't handling things. I was making sure the bills were paid, the paperwork was getting done. You took over my finances. I managed them for the household. No, I said, standing now. You managed me. He scoffed like I was overreacting. It's not like I drained your account. Did you even ask me once? Did you sit me down and say, hey, Mom, do you want help with this? You're not exactly organized, he mumbled. And besides, you don't go anywhere, you don't spend money. What's the difference? What's the difference?
The phrase echoed like thunder through my chest. "The difference," I said, voice shaking but not breaking, "is that you decided, not me. You wrote me out of my own life." He tried again. "Mom, it's not a big deal." "Forgery is a big deal. Manipulation is a big deal. Treating your mother like a pawn is a big deal." And there it was, the silence that always followed when he knew he'd gone too far but didn't want to admit it. I left the folder on the kitchen table. For the first time in 2 decades, I slept in the guest room. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was sleeping inside someone else's shadow. I felt like I was stepping out.
The law office smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. A bell above the door jingled when I entered, and for a moment I wanted to turn back. I hadn't been in a lawyer's office since I signed the mortgage with my husband in '91. But this time, it was just me. And I wasn't here to protect property. I was here to protect myself. The receptionist was kind, early 30s, red hair, freckles. She offered me water, asked if I wanted a seat by the window. I declined. I didn't want comfort. I wanted facts. A few minutes later, I sat across from Mr. Gilmore, gray suit, tired eyes, and a voice like an NPR host. He looked over the papers I'd brought, the forged signatures, the caregiver claims, the letters I'd never seen until that charger went missing. He didn't interrupt, didn't flinch, just read. Then he closed the file and looked at me the way a surgeon looks before saying, "This might hurt." "Mrs. Carter," he began, "from what I see here, your son has legally positioned himself to have partial authority over your financial decisions." I nodded, but I never signed anything. He tapped one of the forms. "According to this, you did, twice." I didn't. Then he either forged your signature or misrepresented your consent through coercion. The words felt clinical, cold, but my hands burned. "Can I reverse it?" He hesitated. "Yes, but it would require proving that you were competent at the time, mentally sound, not impaired, which, by your presence here and clarity today, I have no doubt you are." He paused again. "But if he's accessed or transferred any funds under that authority, you'd need to audit everything, possibly file a report." I swallowed. "Would that mean pressing charges?" "It depends on what we find, but yes, potentially." I stared at the edge of his desk, where a small cactus sat in a ceramic pot that read, "Keep growing." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. "I don't want to ruin him," I said quietly. "I understand. I just want him to stop seeing me as a tool. I want my life back." He leaned forward. "Then let's start with revoking the current financial power. You'll need to sign a few things." And just like that, a page turned. I walked out of that office with my shoulders straighter than they'd been in years. Not because I was planning revenge, but because I was taking back identity. I wasn't his maid, his meal prepper, his emergency contact, his free ride. I was Alice Carter, 63 years old, and finally remembering who that was. That night, I made 2 cups of tea, brought one into his room. He looked up from his tablet, confused. "What's this?" "Chamomile," I said. "I thought we might talk." He blinked. "About what?" I smiled gently. "About boundaries." In New Chapter, the confrontation they've both been avoiding finally erupts. And when he crosses the final line, she does something no one saw coming. The tea sat between us like a line in the sand. He didn't drink it, just stared at the steam curling in the lamplight. His face was unreadable, not sad, not angry, not grateful, just annoyed, like I'd interrupted something more important. "You want to talk?" he said finally, setting his tablet aside with a sigh. "About what? The little walk you took to the lawyer's office today?" I didn't flinch. "Yes, exactly that." He rolled his eyes. "So you're making me the villain now?" I let the silence stretch. Then, "I think you've been the villain for a while. You just got used to me not noticing." That landed. He shifted in his chair, crossed his arms. So what? You're gonna sue me now? Call the police? Have your own son dragged out for doing what? Keeping your lights on? Making sure we don't lose the house? You forged my name. I protected us. No, I said. You controlled me. You rewrote my life to suit your comfort. His voice rose. I'm in a wheelchair. I nodded. Yes, and I was still willing to give you everything. His lip curled. Well, excuse me if I didn't send a thank you card every time you made a sandwich. That's the thing, I said softly. You don't even know what you've taken, and not just from me, from yourself. You built your identity around being served, and now that I'm standing up, you're scared. He laughed bitterly. You think going to some potluck and drawing stick figures makes you free? I stood, calm, tall. No, I said, I make me free. He looked like he wanted to throw something, to slam a door he couldn't reach, to crawl out of the truth that was now staring him in the face. I gave up my life for you, I said, and I did it out of love, but you twisted that into entitlement. You made me feel like I owed you more, always more. He said nothing, so I leaned forward, voice steady as stone. Starting tomorrow, I'm no longer your nurse, your cook, your assistant, or your ATM. I am your mother, and that means I will help you, if I choose to, not because I have no choice. He stared at me, stunned. For the first time in years, he looked small. Not because of his chair, but because he realized he had lost the only power he ever wielded, my silence. I walked to the door, paused. You want to live like a grown man? Then start acting like one. And then I left him there, with his tea and the truth. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't doubt myself. I slept like someone who had nothing left to fear, because the spell was broken. In new chapter, the consequences unfold, and when she makes her boldest move yet, it sends shockwaves through their entire family. The next morning, I didn't make breakfast. Not out of spite, but out of peace. I made myself a soft-boiled egg and toast, sat by the window, drew the steam curling from my mug with a pencil that finally felt like mine again. He didn't call. No, Mom, where's the coffee? No, did you do the laundry? No demands. Just silence. And that silence wasn't awkward. It was earned. By noon, I heard his wheelchair creak through the hallway. He rolled up to the kitchen door, paused, looked at me sitting there, a woman with her own breakfast, her own mind, and no apology in her eyes. You're really doing this, he muttered. I nodded. Yes. His jaw worked. What am I supposed to do? I tilted my head. Figure it out, like I did for 20 years. That was the day things began to shift. Not explode, not collapse, just tilt. He didn't yell, he didn't beg, he didn't slam doors. But for the first time since the accident, he started doing things on his own, small things, wheeling himself to the kitchen, microwaving leftovers, calling the clinic himself to reschedule a missed appointment. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't even consistent, but it was movement, and for once, it wasn't me pushing the wheels. That afternoon, I drove to the Wednesday potluck with a blueberry pie and a new dress. Ben was there, same tweed coat, same gentle smile. Is this seat taken? I asked. He grinned. Only if you don't mind bad puns and too much pie. I sat, I laughed, I felt light. People noticed. They commented. You look younger. Something's different about you. You've got your glow back, Alice. And I did. Not because of makeup, not because of freedom, but because I finally stopped living like I was a service. At home, I found a voicemail from my niece Claire, my sister's daughter in Denver. Hi, Alice. I just wanted to check in. Aaron called me earlier, said you were acting strange lately. I don't know what's going on, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at the phone. Strange? Standing up for myself is strange now? But then again, maybe it is. To people who've never seen me do it before. I called Claire back.
We talked for over an hour. Turns out, she had no idea I'd been caring for him full time. She thought we had a nurse. She thought I had help. She thought my life had space in it. When I told her the truth, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You deserved better. You still do." And I don't know why, but hearing that from someone half my age made my chest tremble. Because maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe reclaiming your life isn't selfish. Maybe it's just overdue. That in New Chapter, she finally invites someone into her world, and what they witness in that house changes everything.
Claire arrived on Saturday. She brought me daisies, hugged me like she hadn't since she was 12, and looked around the house with a quiet curiosity I could feel through her eyes. "It's smaller than I remembered," she said. "It shrinks when you're the only one cleaning it," I smiled. She laughed, but there was an ache behind it. When Aaron heard her voice, he came wheeling into the kitchen faster than I'd seen in weeks. "Claire, wow, what a surprise!" He put on that face, the charming, self-effacing smile he used when he wanted people to believe he was the victim of circumstance, not the architect of comfort. She hugged him. "Hey, cousin, it's been a while." They made small talk, but her eyes kept flicking to me. The way I stood by the stove, the way I instinctively reached for his water cup, then stopped myself. She noticed. At lunch, I served sandwiches, not cut in triangles, not without crusts, not according to how Aaron likes it. Just sandwiches. He didn't say thank you. Claire did. Later, as I rinsed dishes, I heard them talking in the living room. Aaron. "She's just been different lately, distant, cold. I think she's overwhelmed." Claire. "Have you told her that?" "She doesn't really listen anymore. She's on this independence kick. I think she's having some kind of late-life crisis." That word again, crisis, as if self-respect were a disease. I stepped in, no hesitation this time. "I'm not having a crisis," I said. Both heads turned. I met Claire's gaze. "I'm having a revelation." Claire blanked. "About what?" "That I gave 20 years of my life, and somewhere along the way, I disappeared, and I'm not doing that anymore." Aaron looked embarrassed. "Mom." "No, let me finish." I turned to Claire. My voice didn't shake. For 20 years, I fed him, bathed him, missed funerals, weddings, vacations. I haven't slept through a full night in longer than you've been married. And when I started asking for one afternoon a week to myself, he called it selfish. Claire didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Aaron tried to chuckle. "It's not like that. You're making it sound—" "It is like that," I cut in. "You just didn't expect anyone else to see it." Claire stayed the night. She insisted on helping with dinner, then surprised me by asking where I kept my art supplies. "Do you still draw?" she asked. I nodded. That night, we sat together at the kitchen table, she with watercolor, me with charcoal, painting fruit like it mattered. We didn't talk about him. We didn't need to. Sometimes healing starts with silence, the kind that's shared, not forced. The next morning, as she packed to leave, she hugged me twice, tight. "You're not alone," she whispered. I believed her. For the first time in years, I actually believed her. In New Chapter, a letter arrives, but it's not from a lawyer. It's from someone she thought had long forgotten her, and what it contains changes everything. The envelope was cream-colored, with cursive handwriting I hadn't seen in over 30 years. No return address, just my name, Alice Carter. The kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who still believes in letters, not texts, ink, not keys. For a moment, I just stared at it, like it had traveled through time. I opened it slowly, carefully, like unwrapping something sacred. The paper was thick, soft at the edges, the ink slightly smudged. It started simply. "Dear Alice, I don't know if this will reach you. I don't even know if you'll want to read it, but I hope you do." My heart paused. I knew that voice in my head, calm, warm, a little unsure. Walter, the only man I ever loved after my husband,
The one I let go when my son needed me more. We'd met 2 years after the accident. He worked part-time at the clinic where Aaron did physical therapy. Soft-spoken, listened more than he talked, never asked for too much. He brought me coffee once, just once. And I remember thinking, this could be the first man in a long time who sees me. But I pushed him away. Aaron was still adjusting. I was still grieving the life we'd lost. And loving someone new felt like betrayal. So I chose my role: mother, caregiver, martyr. And Walter faded into the background. His letter continued. I wanted to say this sooner. I should have. But back then, I thought you needed space. Now I think what you needed was someone to fight for you. And I regret not being that man. Tears welled up before I even realized they were there. He hadn't forgotten. He'd seen me, back then, and still, somehow, now. You gave everything to your son. I watched it happen. You disappeared, Alice, slowly, beautifully, tragically. But now I hear, through town chatter, through kind gossip, that you're reappearing, that you've started drawing again, that you went to a lawyer, that you even smiled at a church lunch. If that's true, I'm proud of you. I never stopped being proud of you. The words blurred as I read them. I pressed the paper to my chest and sat in silence. Not sadness, not regret, just silence. Like my soul had been seen, finally, gently, without demand. In the back of the envelope, there was a photo, an old one. Me and Walter, at the 4th of July fair. I was holding a lemonade, he was wearing that ridiculous straw hat, and we were laughing, full, open-mouthed laughing. I hadn't remembered Joy looking that good on me. There was no phone number, no address, just this. If you ever want to talk, just say the word. I'll hear it. Walter. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I lit a candle, sat with the letter in my lap, and sketched that photo like it was the only moment that ever mattered. And maybe, in a way, it was. Because it reminded me, I was someone before I was needed, and I can be someone again. In New Chapter, her son finds the letter, and what he does next forces a final decision she can't walk back from.
I left the letter on the table. Not by accident, not carelessly. I wanted to reread it that evening with fresh eyes and maybe sketch a new version of that photo. Me and Walter, sunlight and lemonade, and real laughter. But I never got the chance, because when I came back from my afternoon walk, it was gone. He was sitting at the kitchen table, the envelope open, the photo held loosely in one hand. I froze. His eyes were hard, not broken, calculating. "What is this?" he asked. "I think you can read," I said calmly. He slapped the letter down. "So now you're writing love notes behind my back?" I stared at him. "Behind your back? You're not my husband, Aaron." He blinked. That hit deeper than he expected. "You know what I mean. You're acting like you're not even part of this family anymore." I stepped closer. I was never allowed to be anything but this family, and now I'm finally being something else, myself. He held up the photo. "This guy? Really? After all these years?" I met his eyes. "He was kind to me, when you weren't, when no one was." Silence. Then he sneered. "You know what this looks like? A midlife meltdown, an old woman grasping at fantasy." I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "You sound scared." His head jerked. "Of what?" "Of the idea that I might not be yours to control anymore." He stood, as much as his chair would allow. His hands gripped the table. "Don't twist this, Mom. I need you." I nodded. "You need care. You don't need control." He didn't answer. So I kept going. "I loved you through the hardest years of your life, but you stopped loving me the moment I stopped sacrificing everything." He looked down, quiet. Not because he understood, but because he didn't know what to say when his tricks stopped working. I took the letter from the table,
smoothed its edges, tucked it back into the envelope like it was made of glass. "You had no right to read it," I said softly. "You left it out." "No, I left it for me. That's the difference you never learned. Not everything in this house belongs to you." He wheeled back slowly, his breath shallow. "You're gonna leave me, aren't you?" I didn't answer, because I hadn't decided how. But in my heart, I knew. The moment of decision was very, very close. That night, I placed the letter in a small cedar box, the same one that used to hold my engagement ring. I locked it, not out of fear, but out of respect for what I was becoming, and for the first time in years, I didn't check on him before bed. That night, I placed the letter in a small cedar box, the same one that used to hold my engagement ring. I locked it, not out of fear, but out of respect for what I was becoming, and for the first time in years, I didn't check on him before bed. Para, in new chapter, she begins to make arrangements, quiet ones, final ones, and when the moment comes, she finally says the one word she denied herself for 20 years, no.
I started with the small things. A call to Denise, the caseworker, a question about long-term respite care programs. Nothing dramatic, just facts, just options. She didn't ask why, but I think she knew. Next, I boxed up a few of my clothes, my sketchbooks, a couple of cookbooks I hadn't touched in years, but still meant something to me. I wasn't moving out, not yet, but I was preparing, mentally, spiritually, physically, and that in itself was a revolution. He noticed the difference. The house got quieter. I stopped asking what he wanted for dinner, stopped bringing his meds with a smile, stopped reacting to his moods like they were gospel. He began calling my name more often, not angrily, not bossy, just unsure. "Mom?" "Yes?" Never mind. Like he wasn't sure what I was anymore. A servant? A roommate? A stranger? Claire called again, said she'd been looking into part-time assisted living resources. "There are grants," she said, "and programs that give caregivers a break, real breaks." I nodded into the phone. "I think I'm ready." She didn't say, "Finally." She just said, "I'm proud of you." I started sleeping in the guest room more often. He didn't like it. He didn't say so, but I could feel it in the way he slammed drawers, the way he sighed louder than necessary. Control wasn't a chain anymore. It was a leash slipping through his fingers. One morning, I poured myself coffee and sat on the porch. No phone, no errands, just air, just me. He wheeled out behind me. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded. "I've been thinking, maybe we can go back to how it was, just you and me, like always." I didn't look at him. I just took a sip of my coffee. And for the first time in 2 decades, I said it, "No." He blanked. "No?" he echoed, like the word was foreign. "No," I repeated, clear, calm, final. He looked away, back toward the door, his shoulders slumped, and I felt no guilt, because no wasn't cruelty. It was self-respect. In new chapter, the decision becomes public, and when the family gathers for a visit, the truth she's been carrying quietly finally comes to light. They came on a Sunday. Claire, her husband, Matt, even my sister Ruth, who hadn't been in my house in over 10 years. It was meant to be a family visit. Aaron suggested it, no doubt hoping that with enough smiling faces and shared memories, I'd fall back into place. I baked a pie, not because he asked, but because I wanted to reclaim the ritual on my terms. We sat around the table, passing dishes and small talk. Aaron played the gracious host. "Mom's been doing a lot better lately," he said. "More energy, getting out. It's good." Claire's eyes met mine. She knew. Matt asked about the old willow tree in the backyard. Ruth complimented the curtains. Aaron smiled like nothing was wrong. But everything was. At one point, Claire gently said, "And Alice, tell them about the art class you were thinking of taking." I hesitated. Aaron cut in. "Oh, she won't have time for that. Too much going on at home."
I set down my fork, wiped my mouth, and said, "Yes, I will have time, because I'm taking a step back from caregiving." Silence. All at once, the room leaned in. Ruth blinked. "From what?" "From full-time care," I said. "I've done it for 20 years, and now I need my life back." Aaron forced a laugh. "Mom, don't make it sound like I've been keeping you in chains." I turned to him slowly. "You forged my signature on legal documents, Aaron. You've lied, manipulated, taken for granted. And now that I've stopped allowing it, you're trying to rewrite the story." Claire looked horrified. "You what?" Ruth gasped. "Is that true?" He fumbled. "It's not like that. I was trying to make things easier." "For who?" I asked. "For you?" The table froze. I stood. Not to storm out, not to perform, just to take my place. I gave up my career, my health, my relationships, my dignity. I gave my whole life to this house, and no one asked me if I wanted that. Least of all, the man I gave it all for. No one spoke. Matt lowered his eyes. Claire nodded, lips trembling. Ruth covered her mouth. Aaron sat in silence. He had no script for this moment, because for the first time, he wasn't the one talking. I was. "I'm not abandoning you," I said. "I'm rescuing myself." Then I sat back down, calm, still, clear. And no one, not even Aaron, said a word. In New Chapter, she spends her first night away. And in the quiet of a borrowed room, she realizes she doesn't miss the old life, not even a little.
The room smelled like lavender. It was Claire's guest room. Small, neat, soft yellow walls, and a quilt that looked like it had stories sewn into every square. I sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase still zipped. My hands were calm, my breathing even. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd feel guilt. I felt peace. Claire made tea, left it by the nightstand, kissed the top of my head like I was the one who needed tucking in now. "I'm proud of you," she said again. I smiled. "I'm proud of me too." That night, I slept without setting an alarm. No medicine charts, no midnight repositioning, no wheelchairs in the hallway. Just the soft whir of the ceiling fan and a mind that wasn't bracing for the next demand. And in that quiet, I met myself again. Not mom, not caregiver, not problem solver, just Alice. The next morning, I walked to the corner cafe and ordered a cinnamon roll and coffee, sat near the window, watched people pass. No one needed me. And for once, that didn't make me sad. It made me free. A week later, the formal documents were signed. Denise arranged regular nurse visits for Aaron. Ruth agreed to help with finances. Claire made it clear she was watching. He never called to say thank you. But he didn't call to beg either. Maybe that was progress. Maybe that was him learning. Maybe not. Either way, I didn't wait. I joined the art class. On my first day, the instructor asked us to draw a moment that changed us. Some drew weddings, others births. One woman drew a hospital room. I drew a woman walking out the front door with nothing in her hands but her name. Sometimes I think about Walter. I haven't written him back. Not yet. But I framed that photo, and I keep it near my pencils, because it reminds me. Love doesn't always arrive on time, but it arrives. One Sunday, I went back to the church potluck. Not to serve, not to hide, just to be. Pastor Louisa hugged me. Ben saved me a seat. Someone played an old hymn on the piano. I sang. My voice was rusty, but it was mine. And as the sunlight spilled through stained glass and landed on my hands, I realized, I am no one's servant. I am no one's burden. I am my own beginning, and I am just getting started. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever found yourself again after being forgotten? Thank you for staying with me through it all. This is my story, but maybe it's yours too.